Hello, welcome to Shalom World. My name is Patricia Keane and I am presenting a series on pornography called The Porn Disaster.
The porn is going to come and find you. We've discussed that before. It's a predator.
Parents' initial reaction can be of shock.
Secrets lose their power when they're no longer secrets.
It is all about the relationship. Is part of the healing.
If we can understand our faith, our right, then we realize what tremendous resources we have for these moments of crisis.
Today, in episode 7, we're going to be dealing with pastoral and parental care for children. But before we go into our episode today, I want to introduce my guest.
Father Chris Hayden, priest from the Diocese of Ferns, Ireland. Spiritual Director, St. Patrick's Seminary, Maynooth. Father Alan Hoffa, priest from the Diocese of Allentown, USA. He has BA in Philosophy and Masters in Divinity. Dr. Kielty Oberlin. She's from Ireland, doctorate in Psychology and Masters in Counseling, specializing in eating disorder recovery. Gerard O'Donoghue. He is an engineer from Ireland, counseling parents and creating awareness around pornography.
Our topic today is the pastoral and parental care for children. In our past episode, we were dealing with the issue of parents being afraid to speak out. And in this episode, we're going to be looking at the beautiful nature of pastoral care for parents and children, and the parental care for children also. And this really is an episode that gives hope. Life is really all about the very most beautiful things that we have. And one of them is our incredible faith. And that's where you find true and real beauty. So we're going to be looking at what the church has to offer us and what the experts have to offer us in all of this. And it's based on experience. So Father Alan, I'm going to you first.
One of the things that when the church looks at this problem, there is a need for pastoral care. And for most priests, the first touch point that the church has in terms of responding to the issue of pornography is the confessional. But it also is an opportunity for us to be able to work in the area of prevention. So intervention can happen in the confessional, but prevention as we're preparing people, especially young children, for the reception of the sacrament of reconciliation. One of the things that we know is that mortal sin has 3 primary aspects: grave matter, sufficient reflection, and full consent of the will. And for our young people, they are capable of that once they reach the age of reason. And so it's important for us in the proper context as they grow to make sure that examination of conscience for our young people, especially when we get into those middle school ages, which we would define as grades 6, 7, 8, and onward, has the mention of pornography in an address of an examination of conscience with the 6th commandment, because this is a grave sin when it regards the gift of our human sexuality. Then when it comes to the aspect of the confessional, again, we've talked before in previous segments about balancing the being about the good and against the bad. And so sometimes when this comes to the reality is when a person has viewed pornography, there is a physiological reaction. And so they come to the confessional, and what do they feel? And I think this is an important moment to make a differential between shame and guilt. In my work for 7 years now, in encountering people who are struggling with pornography, the issue of shame is something that a lot of people associate with their pornography use, their pornography habit, their pornography addiction. And one of the things that I'm very quick to do is to stop them, because I remind them the difference between shame and guilt. Shame is about who we are. Guilt is about what we've done. God is not a God of shame. He doesn't shame us. We should not shame ourselves, and we should not shame one another. Shame changes who we are. And it is important for children especially, but also for adults to understand that each of us are beloved sons and daughters of the Father. That never changes. And in the beauty of that teaching of our faith it is then translated into, but we should feel guilt about what we've done wrong, but that guilt propels us into a place where we can do something about it. We can first go to sacramental confession, but then we can also go and seek those remedies that are out there in the church and in society to be able to help us. And that could be for a child, going to a parent and finally having the courage to say, I've been viewing pornography. I've been struggling with pornography. Or if it's scary to go to a parent for one reason or another, to a counselor, to someone, of course, the priest is bound by the seal of confession. But it is very, very important that if a parent, especially, were to find out that their child was viewing pornography, to not bring that aspect of shame in there, because it can multiply the effects of pornography use in a child, and it can keep them in a place that is very, very hard to climb out of, or takes a longer time to climb out of once they've gotten into that rhythm of viewing pornography. So the church is, the church has to be a part of all that we've been talking about, of bringing education, intervention, prevention to the lives of all the faithful. But when it comes to children, that whole aspect of guilt and shame is so important across the board, but especially for children, it can be such a stunting reality, and it can also put them off from the church. Because if the connection to what the church teaches is shaming a child, now you're not only causing them to have a fear about bringing that sin and that struggle of pornography to the table, it's actually separating them from the entire church and can be very, very destructive. So balancing being about the good and against the bad is important. God is not a God of shame. He is a God of love, but he also wants us to be responsible. And if we feel guilt, he has a remedy for that, where he can continue to show us his love through the sacrament of reconciliation.
I think it's good as a follow-on from that, when we speak about the sacrament of reconciliation, pastoral care, the specific care of the church for her children. I think it's also worthwhile just putting in there that this does not mean pray it away, or that it's a spiritual problem and here's what you need to do, you'll be fine. Got a problem with porn? Say your prayers. No, of course we want prayer, and we have the sacraments and all the beauty and the healing that they can bring, but they are part of a bigger package. We don't circumvent the human. We build on the human. There's an old Latin tag that says grace builds on nature, and grace will not get anywhere in any event unless we take account of human nature, which is what we strive to do. And that's why we're at the table with the parents and clinicians, and we want to do that because we're not some sort of dispensers of grace in isolation from the human reality. So I think it's good just have that out there as a caveat, because we can be deliberately misconstrued as offering simplistic nostrums. Say your prayers, you'll be fine. Not at all, far from it. And sometimes even perhaps devout Catholics can have a notion that what I need to do is just pray harder and I'll be fine. No, you need to attend to your human reality. And if you come and it's all just a spiritual thing that you need to readjust in your life, pray harder, longer, more intensely. No, the Lord wants us to work on our humanity, and we must attend to that. So we bring some wonderful things to the table. We bring grace to the table, but we also have to attend to our God-given human nature.
The idea of a child watching pornography can create a lot of disgust in a parent. Okay, it's something obnoxious. And a parent's initial reaction can be of shock. Father, you have experienced this. Can you expound on that experience for parents? And basically, we'll go into how not to react.
One of the big things with that and that shocking reaction is, yes, it can be shocking. No matter what the situation is, that initial shock. The big thing is Pope Francis talks about this so beautifully, is accompaniment. And in this reality of pornography with both child and parent, and then when we will talk about adults as well, it is the church walking along with them, not forcing them, but not abandoning them at the same time, but to let them know that really one of the things that can really empower a person who is struggling or is there in a parental role with a child who is struggling is that to put them in the driver's seat. They're not just following along blindly. Yes, they're blindsided by this, but now it's time to get in the driver's seat and drive this. And that is a beautiful opportunity to have that sense of control and ownership over the well-being of your child, over the well-being of your parenting for your child, and to continue forward. So I found in a lot of situations that, when that report gets made and when the parent comes to find out that, yes, this is happening, okay, give them that time to let that initial fact or that initial reality hit. And then from there, you continue on to walk with them and give them the resources that they need, which is not only letting them know about what the church teaches, but that the church is there and connected to especially clinicians and those who can be of great help to a family in helping them to heal. And that's the other thing is, I would say the biggest thing, maybe it's encapsulated in, is hope. There is hope in all of this. There is no need to despair. There is no need to think that all is lost, that children can't come back from this, that adults can't come back from this. One of the reasons why we're doing all of this is to get hope into the minds of people, and the church can be there partnering with clinicians especially to be able to bring that hope into the lives of families.
I know we don't want just to be listening to us two priests in this section, but can I very briefly say, we have an interesting, balancing act is a rather trivial term. It's an exquisite, if you like, spiritual and human balance that we maintain. We proclaim the reality of sin. There's no doubt about that. And we regard pornography as sinful. And we're encouraging people to live a life of grace. But at a deeper and a higher level, we're proclaiming a message of mercy, of healing, and of hope. And that should never be forgotten. We wouldn't want people harking back to a mythical church of harsh judgments, which is in many people's minds, it's anchored there by a kind of a cultural narrative. The most important thing you need to hear is the message of forgiveness, of mercy, of hope, of healing, that no matter where you are, no matter where you have been, you have a future. Your children have a future. That's the most important thing to be put out there. Sure, we proclaim sin, but we proclaim sin as a way of naming a reality, but also a way of the gravity of our situation. Our choices are very real, and we can turn away from all that's good and holy. But healing, hope, mercy, a future, that's foundational.
Kielty, dealing with this topic at a clinical level, the word understanding comes to mind, that when you take somebody through several sessions and they begin to understand the behaviour, why they resort to that, how important is that issue of understanding, getting to the place where you understand how you've ended up in this place?
I think from the very beginning, and I said this in another segment, I work in terms of, I'm counseling psychology. It is all about the relationship is part of the healing. And so we need to be understanding, to show mercy, to look at the person as, when we talk about shame, porn opens up a person to shame. And because especially when a child does it, but it's all ages actually. And a person when they come in is probably that a lot of that shame underneath is feeling not good enough, broken, dirty, all of these things. And they need to actually be able to process that with another human being, because it has broken their relationship with their self, with their relationship with God. How could God love me now? So there's a lot, their relationship with their parents, their carers, they feel shame and guilt. Like, how are they going to look at me again? And especially when it's children, they don't have the words or the language to understand what they're going through. So working clinically, that's where we're guiding that type of healing, as well as accompanying them and helping to encourage lifestyle changes, to work through withdrawal and all of the other bits that come through with the healing, in the healing process.
If a child has been watching pornography, and because I've heard this from other people, that they were relieved that they had been found out, that it gives a freedom to them. Father Alan, can you take that up?
It was something that Gerard had mentioned earlier, and it's this saying, secrets lose their power when they're no longer secrets. And that moment when that comes to light, the burden that is relieved, because here's the thing, the way that the brain chemistry works is that there may be a focus on the pornography, and oftentimes is connected with masturbation as well. And the way the physiological reality works is that once that process takes place, the viewing and the action afterwards, there is this chemical dump in the brain and there is this feeling of loneliness. And so oftentimes when children look back on that feeling as they grow up and they feel this sense of emptiness and loneliness, and a pain and just that it doesn't feel right. That moment that they now know that someone can help, even though they're usually scared about being caught, once they do have someone who's intervening, the weight that's released from their shoulders, once they have the time to process and know that people care. That's why we say never let parents or people who are in authority impose shame. Love them through, because they've been through a lot already, and we need to love them through it.
There's a learning for this in parents, and the first thing is don't overreact. Is that the first thing you would say when you found out that your child has been watching porn, or the child tells you that don't overreact?
It is true. We don't want them to overreact. But again, part of what helps to minimize that overreaction is the education part on the part of parents, so that they understand that this could happen. And so you don't want to live in this constant anxiousness that it's going to. But at the same time, you want to be as prepared as possible, because inevitably it will come up, just with the rampant nature of pornography. And so it's important to be prepared so that overreaction doesn't happen.
What would be the first step in you find your child has been watching pornography? What is your first step in education?
In terms of educating the child or educating themselves?
Educate the parent.
One of the big things is to remember that you're not in a village by yourself. You're not on an island alone. And the next thing is that there are resources out there. We've talked about, for instance, plunging pornography, which is a great help. There's other online resources. But then the other thing too is to prepare yourself to go in and to love that child. And especially from a faith perspective, one of the things that you can let them know that makes a powerful impact is that when you go to talk to them about that, to let them know before you do that you're going to love them like Jesus loves them in this moment in a very particular way.
They're not going to be punished.
Don't even bring up the word. Don't focus, because there should be something along the way that happens that may be a restriction of device use or something like that that they may consider a Don't even talk about punishment. Just talk about the fact that they're going to be loved through this, and that they won't even notice that punishments or consequences are happening, but that the parent is following through with the things that are necessary to help them.
Or that you can't watch that dirty stuff anymore, to avoid language like that.
Exactly.
Exactly. Removing the word dirty and horrible, and because does the child take that on?
It's going to maximize the shame that, as Father so aptly put, they've now internalized that it is about them. Part of this healing is that they need to be able to separate what they've seen from it has changed me. You know, we have to come out of that.
There's a godlike quality there for parents. And I don't mean to sound idealistic or overly pious about it, but in truth, there's a godlike quality that parents exercise there. They wrap their children in love at that very moment of shame. It's a bit like the prodigal son coming home and the father has only love, and he puts his cloak around him and puts his ring on his finger. And I think if parents can... And again, this is a broader catechetical and spiritual issue, a formational issue for us all as pastors and as Catholics. If we can understand our faith aright, then we realise what tremendous resources we have for these moments of crisis.
It can certainly be a very beautiful moment. Gerard, you want to come in there?
Yeah, a couple of points. I suppose the empathy or travelling along, as you said, Pope Francis said. I mean, like, the porn is going to come and find you. We've discussed that before. It's a predator. So, for example, even 3 or 4 weeks ago, myself, we can say to the children, it will happen to us as adults. You know, it just popped up on the screen there, nice looking girl, nothing at all, nudity, nothing that. You're kind of going, but I didn't go looking for this, so I'm really allowed to look at it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like and for a child, they can't process all this. Well, they didn't go looking for it, but it will find any of us. And it's very dangerous if it finds the child. But also, something I'd like to say as well is that we can put all these things in for children and help them, you know, the blockers, and talk to them, and they won't look it up. But they could be at a friend's house, they could be out with friends, and their friends will have it. So really, the important thing, I suppose, for us as parents is we're living in... how would you say, a porn-concentrated world. So it's going to find some way in. So we have to deal with it. We can't put our heads in the sand and not deal with it. One worrying thing, I suppose, for parents is that parents in Ireland, anyway, we've been kind of sidelined, really, in a way, and we're more now spectators or stakeholders when it comes, say, to discussing these topics in schools, you know, and in the Constitution, we're recognized as the primary and natural educators. The family is recognized as the building block for society, but yet, you know, it seems to be now our position is being usurped by the government and different bodies and NGOs, etc. You know, where they're saying this sex education policies, they should be science-based, but at the same time, they want the concept of gender identity be recognized. Well, you want your bread buttered on both sides.
Have we become a pornographic people?
A society that prioritizes the sexual gratification of adults over the innocence and the well-being of children, it has all the ingredients for being a pornographic society. So it's fair to say, and there is a phrase used by some writer or other, the pornographication of culture, the pornographication of childhood, that this is happening. It's a large, slow, like an iceberg, it's a drift. And we need to be doing our darndest too. But yes, I think the fair answer, or there's a reasonable answer, is yes, we have become a pornographied society in many respects.
And we're not aware of that. It has just slowly crept in.
We're becoming more and more aware of it, and conversations like this, God willing, will help us to grow in awareness of it, because it's not, if we can knuckle under and just, you know, let things happen, but that's not what we're called to do. There are people who have agendas that are profoundly unhelpful and unhealthy and contrary to the flourishing and welfare of our children, and we want to work against them to the last breath. So
we will be touching on that in our next episode, episode 8, where we're moving to adults now, and adults and porn addiction, and what do the science, the medicines and psychology have to say about the brains of adults. We're also going to be looking at, you know, the myth that a little bit of pornography doesn't hurt anybody. And then we'll be moving into recovery, the later stages of recovery for adults. So please do join us for next week's episode, which will be episode 8. Father, your little meditation.
Yeah, when I was pondering a concluding prayer for this segment, I thought the lovely and well-known prayer of St. Ignatius, it could be prayed by parents on behalf of their child. So put the child in the picture. Take, Lord, receive my memory, my understanding, my entire will. You have given all to me, now I return it. Give me only your love and your grace. That's enough for me, your love and your grace.
Thank you for watching Shalom World, and I look forward to you joining us in our next episode.